Today, I am Jacqueline F. Craig and I am here to present the impact of religion to landscape. All religions have sacred structure, but the functions of buildings influence the arrangement of the structures across the landscape. Sacred structures. First, Christian churches. Christian landscape is dominated by the high density of churches. This is true for some communities, including barangays, because they have Christian structures including chapels, and for small and rural areas, they have what they call tuklo. Church building plays a critical role in Christianity than the other religion because it is an expression of their religious principles, and for Christians, attendance and collective worship is extremely important. Traditionally, in some communities, the church was the largest and tallest building and was placed at important square or location. Although this characteristic may no longer be applied in larger cities because there are a lot of buildings and skyscrapers, including in example in Makati, there are a lot of buildings for enterprises. And this characteristic may be applied in rural areas because there is no much building and churches are mostly the highest and the tallest building in the place. And here, this is the example of the largest and the tallest Christian structure in the world. This is called Umünster Cathedral that is located at Germany. Churches reflected both cultural and values of the denomination and the region's architectural heritage. Eastern Orthodox churches follow an architectural style that developed in the Byzantine Empire during the 15th century. Byzantine Empire is the continuation of the Roman Empire during the late antiquity of the Middle Ages. In the Eastern Orthodox churches, it is prominently topped with domes and highly ornate. This is the example of Eastern Orthodox churches. This is topped with prominent domes and very detailed. Then, availability of building materials also influence church appearance. In the United States, there are diversities of the appearance of their churches because it reflected on the materials found by the early settlers. Christopher Wren, one of the most prominent architects that have been commissioned to create religious structures. So this is Christopher Wren, and he is one of the most prominent architectures in the late 17th century in London. His works, for example, are the St. Paul Cathedral and the St. Bride Church. The next, basilicas, modeled after the Roman building for public assembly. So this is the example of basilica. And basilica is a rectangular building which is divided into two rows which form an aisle, and this is the nave hall or the center, and it has two aisles, the western aisle and the eastern aisle. Then the next is the places to worship. First is the mosque. Muslims can consider as a space for community assembly. This is the place where Islams gathered for worship, not viewed as a sanctified place but a location for community to gather for worship. As I said earlier, compared to the Christians, Muslims do not consider their place as a sacred place, but instead this is just a place for them to be gathered and to worship Allah. Then cloister, minaret, and musan are some of the elements of the mosque. Cloister, surrounding the courtyard and used for school and non-religious activities. Cloister is the equivalent of convent and ministry in the Christians. Then, also, mosque is sometimes closed in harsher climates, like, for example, in Mindanao, which we all know high risk for terrorist attacks. Some mosques in Mindanao are enclosed, and cloister are also considered or known as enclosed garden. This is the image of the cloister. So the next is minaret. Minaret is usually located at the two sides of the mosque, and this is the appearance of the minaret, and it is a tower where a muezzin or a person who summons people to worship, usually located. Then, another feature of the mosque is what they call pulpit. Pulpit is located at the center or faced at the direction of the Makkah or the direction where the Muslim pray. Makkah is also called as the Qibla direction. Then, the next is the Hindu temple. Serve as a home to one or more gods. Particularly, prominent or particular gods has one or more temples. It contains a small dimly lit interior room, symbolic artifact, or some other image of God dressed. So, the remainder part or spaces of the Hindu temple is used for rituals and unlike or compared to the Christian churches, Hindu temple is commun varied on the commitment of resources and usually the wealthy individuals or groups maintain the temple. Then, next is pagoda. Pagoda is prominent and visually attractive element of the Buddhist and Shintoist landscape. It is usually delicate and very attractive. It contains relics that Buddhists believe to be portion of Buddha's body or clothing. After Buddha's death, Buddhists scrambled to obtain these relics, and as part of the process of diffusion of their religion, these relics is carried to other countries and build pagodas for them. And compared to other churches and religious structures, pagoda is built for individual prayer and meditation than congregational worships. And the last part is the arrangement of land. Burial practices. Christians, Muslims, and Jews usually bury their dead in a particular spot or designated area called the cemetery. Christian burials. Before, in the early times, Christians buried their dead in a place called catacombs. This is protection for the faithful ones in the early Roman Empire when the religion is still illegal. And when the religion is finally legalized, people bury their dead around the yard of the churches. And when this place became overcrowded, there is a need to build a separate burial area which is led by the public and health sanitation, and they lead the building and construction of the what they call now the cemetery. Then next is the traditional burials in China. Traditional burials in China put a pressure on their agricultural land because people in rural areas remove as much as 10% for the burial of their relatives, and that's why government in China encouraged the people to plow over the previous mounds and encourage the use of cremation. The next is the Hindus. In the Hindus, cremation is practiced. First, they wash the dead body in the Ganges River because they believe that it cleanse and rinse them from the sins. And after that, the process of cremation is done. And the unclean portions of the body is exposed in scavenging birds and animals. And also in Tibetan Buddhist, some dead bodies are also exposed to birds and animals, and the cremation is reserved only for the priest. And that's all. Thank you.